Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Overtime, where we are talking about some of the overflow passages from 2 Kings in our series, Choose Your Own Adventure. Today's big idea is you can choose to be a good person and be rejected, or be a humble person and be forgiven. What's your choice? Being a good person means I got this on my own and my own plan. But when we do that, we will actually be rejected by God. But if we choose to humble ourselves before the Lord, He will show us grace and we will be forgiven. And we're going to learn today about how Naaman is so grateful for what God has done. In 2 Kings 5:15, it says this: Then he, that's Naaman, returned to the man of God, who is Elisha, he and all his company, and he came and stood before him. And he said, Behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So accept now a present from your servant. Naaman is so grateful. He has been changed by God that he wants to bring gifts to Elisha. We're actually going to contrast two different characters in this story. We've got Naaman, who most people would consider an unlikely follower of God. He has come out of paganism and polytheism. He has grown up worshiping all these other gods, but now he is declaring that there is only one true God. The other guy we're going to talk about is Gehazi, and he would be someone that we would all consider to be a likely follower of God. After all, he is Elisha's servant, who is a prophet of God. He grew up in this religion, so you would think that he would be a true follower of God, and we're going to find out otherwise. But back to Naaman. Naaman is so grateful that after he has been healed of his leprosy, he comes to Elisha and offers him some very lavish gifts. Because when you're truly grateful for being changed by God, you don't give to God out of religious obligation. You give to God because you're so grateful that He changed your life. Naaman is bringing an offering of worship. Naaman is showing up worshiping. Really crazy story in the New Testament. Jesus healed, I believe, 10 people with leprosy. And probably the most unlikely person is the one that came back and worshiped Jesus and was so grateful. And guess who that 1 out of 10 was? He was a Samaritan, likely a pagan, and he returned to Jesus to express his gratitude and his worship. So here we see humble people that are being received by God, but then good people that are being rejected by God. Speaking of good people being rejected by God, we've got this character named Gehazi. And last week we learned he was kind of a punk. After all, the widow, after her son had died, Gehazi tried to push her away from Elisha. And then later on in 2 Kings chapter 4, he doubted God's power to multiply the bread. Well, now we're going to see a much more sinister side of Gehazi, unfortunately. In 2 Kings 5:20, it says, But when Naaman had gone from him a short distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, See, my master has spared this Naaman the Syrian, in not accepting from his hand what he brought. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. So what is Gehazi doing? He's saying, okay, Naaman is pretty rich, he's pretty loaded, and he offered to give Elisha some gifts, and Elisha refused them. Well, I'm going to take them for myself. What Gehazi is doing is he's looking to be sneaky and deceptive so that he can build his earthly riches, so that he can build his portfolio, so that he can increase his financial liquidity. Those of you that are money people, you know what I'm talking about. Gehazi sees an opportunity to get rich quick, and he is going to not just hope to run into Naaman, but he's actually going to chase him down. Let's continue in the reading. 2 Kings 5:21, it says, So Gehazi followed Naaman. And when Naaman saw someone running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, All is well. Remember that phrase from last week? And he said, All is well. My master has sent me to say. Well, now that's a lie. His master didn't send him. My master has sent me to say, says Gehazi, there have just now come to me from the hill country of Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. Now, this is a complete lie, a complete fabrication. Naaman responds. It says, and Naaman said, be pleased to accept 2 talents. And he urged him and tied up 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothing, and laid them on 2 of his servants, and they carried them before Gehazi. And when he came to the hill, he took them from their hand and put them in the house, and he sent the men away, and they departed. We've got some huge issues here. Now remember, Naaman was an unlikely one that found God's grace. Well, now we have Gehazi, who is a likely one, who is going to completely reject God's way. First off, he has proven that he is completely in love with money above God. I mean, he doesn't just hope to run into Naaman. He is going to chase down Naaman to get these riches that were never meant to be his. And how does he acquire the riches? He lies about them and makes up some story about 2 sons of the prophets that need clothes and they need money. So he tells a deliberate lie to try to get some of these riches. And then thirdly, he's going to lie again, and then he's going to try and hide it from Elisha, who is his boss, who, by the way, is a servant and a prophet of the Most High God. How stupid can you get? I think, how stupid could someone get? But then I think about myself, and I think about some of the things that we see in our lives. Sin can make us really stupid. And you know what? So can money. Money is a sneaky idol in all of our lives. So we see that lying is forbidden in Scripture, but Jesus also says you can't serve 2 masters. You can't serve God and money. And we also know in Scripture that the love of money is the root of all evil, which means there's nothing wrong with having money, but if you love it, then it's the root of all evil. In other words, do you want to have money, or is money going to have you? I find that so incredibly intriguing. And now Gehazi has fallen into this trap of greed. It's almost like he is a predecessor for who Judas would become. We continue in some of the reading. In Numbers 32:23, we see what happens when people get caught up in their sin. It says this, "But if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out." What's going to happen here with Gehazi is he's going to sin, and he's going to feel pretty smart about it, but then his sin is going to find him out. And now he's going to try to hide it from his boss. Look at this, 2 Kings 5:25. He went in and stood before his master, and Elisha said to him, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" And he said, "Your servant went nowhere." But he said to him, "Did not my heart go when the man turned from his chariot to meet you? Was it a time to accept money and garments, olive orchards and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male servants and female servants? Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever." So he went out from his presence a leper, white like snow. Sheesh. Wow. So Gehazi thinks he's pulled off this brilliant little trick where he is a little bit richer now. But then he sees Elisha, and Elisha's like, "Hey man, where you been?" And Gehazi's like, "Oh, nowhere. I've just, been doing my thing, just chilling." Well, here we have yet another lie. And Elisha knows. Remember, Elisha is a man of God. He is a prophet of God, and he has pretty strong instincts. So Elisha in this passage basically says, "My heart went when I saw the chariot turn around." Elisha knows that something creepy was going on. And because Elisha knows that, now he is going to hold Gehazi accountable. Gehazi was someone who was likely to be a follower of God, and he turns out not to be a follower of God. And now Elisha is going to hold him accountable. And how does he hold him accountable? Well, he becomes cursed with leprosy, and not just a long-term leprosy. Immediately, his entire body becomes as white as snow. Proverbs 12:19 says, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is for a moment." Sin might feel good for a moment, but then it gets rotten real fast. As a matter of fact, Gehazi's lie is kind of like a piece of raw meat that might sit on the counter. It's useful, but then all of a sudden it rots, and it rots really quick, and it starts to stink. And the only way to deal with it is to throw it out. That's what this is like. So Gehazi immediately becomes a leper, and it really fulfills what Paul writes in the New Testament in 1 Timothy 6:9. It says, "But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction." Money can be such a sneaky idol to all of us. But Paul tells us, the book of 2 Kings tells us, Jesus tells us that we need to make sure that God is number one. It's okay to have money. It's not okay for money to have us. And one of the best ways that we can exercise our faith in God is to give him our first and to give him our best. But back to Gehazi and to Naaman. Naaman was the unlikely one, but he was humble and he received forgiveness. Gehazi was the likely one, but he was a good person and he was rejected by God. This tells us that there's no way to earn salvation. It is only by the blood. It's never been about performance, perfection, or striving for acceptance. It's only by the blood. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's edition of The Overtime. We're going to do it again next week, Sunday at 1 p.m. I hope everyone has a blessed week. Take care.